Welcome to the Practice Squad Podcast, episode 26. My name is John. I am joined by my co-host, Mark. And, Mark, last week I made the take that championship week is more enjoyable for a football fan than the Super Bowl. And I think in, 22 out of my 24 years of life, that was probably the case. This past week, it kind of had me feeling a little bit deflated, right? And it's not that I didn't enjoy the games, but I think two main things kind of came out of this week, and neither of them really related to good football. It was officiating, and it was the 49ers.
Injuries, yeah.
Injuries, right?
Yeah, the first game sucked, John. The first
Yeah.
game sucked. You start to wonder and ask yourself, is it worth the NFL allowing more roster spots or, especially for high injury positions like, a quarterback where there's only two guys dressed.
Right. Or not even high injury, but just high risk, right?
High risk and not a lot of depth, right? You dress two guys and one guy goes down, the other guy goes down like a quarter later, and all of a sudden you have Christian McCaffrey trying to play quarterback in $1 billion league. I don't know. I feel like there's ways around that, but it sucked. It ruined the game.
A 56-man roster, 58-man roster. I'm not sure. The Lions even had a similar trouble where they lost so many people in their defensive backfield against the Patriots that they were putting linebackers out on man coverage. There's only so much you can do in reference to that. I get it. Injuries do happen. But at the same time, like you said, it's $1 billion league. There's millions and millions of people watching. You got to give us a game if two quarterbacks go down, and there's no reason
a championship game is that big of a blowout, one-sided. And unfortunately, it sucks for people like us who picked the 49ers because we don't get to see really what they were capable of doing. I think a healthy 49ers team might win that game. Early on, it had the feel of the 49ers are moving the ball. Brock Purdy didn't throw an incompletion. He was 4 for 4.
Besides everything went wrong in that first quarter, and they were only down 7. Tied the game at one point. I don't know. It's tough. I'm sure we'll dig into it more, but I also wanted to intro our guest real quick. So this guest is somebody I've known for a long time. He is a Tennessee Titans football fan, which I think there's a lot of ups and downs to discuss about that organization that I'm sure we'll get into. I played fantasy football with him for a couple of years, and he also is in the amateur league for Aussie Rules football, which I think most Americans aren't really aware of how that sport functions. But at the same time, I think it's a great opportunity to inform people on that because of the fact that I've watched it and it's incredibly interesting and actually very fun to watch. So introducing our guest, JP Kirby. JP, how you doing, dude?
Doing great, y'all. Good to be on the show.
Yeah, good having you on. And first things first, so Titans went from winning the AFC last year to not making the playoffs. And it kind of seems like even though they're keeping Vrabel on, the winds of change are kind of blowing with that organization. A lot of different things happened. How are you feeling about the direction of the organization, and what would you kind of like to see them do this next year so that you guys actually make the playoffs and don't have kind of this disappointing year you guys had?
Well, I'd like to see them make some more consistent moves with personnel and be a little more preemptive in what they're doing. And you can see a lot we're all pretty happy that John Robinson is no longer the GM in Nashville. I think that for a very kind of divided fan base over a lot of issues, nobody was really upset about Robinson leaving that GM position. And now, especially once we look at the finances of what are going on, the Titans are about to be in a huge cap hole right when they need to really replace some key pieces before the window is finally closed. I think for a lot of us watching Titans football, this was supposed to be, we all know how quickly you can go from conference contender, a Super Bowl contender, and then you're lost in a rebuild, right? So rocking my Predators jersey because there's this time every year since the year 2000, it's been time to focus on Predators hockey over Titans football. But we look at players like Taylor Lewan, right? Everyone, a lot of people like the boy, but when you've been podcasting way more than you've been playing football, and they're probably going to cut him so they don't take his cap. But this is an issue that should have been taken care of a while ago, restructuring or moving him while he was still healthy enough, instead of sitting on a contract like that and just hoping that a guy's knee is going to magically perform the way it was supposed to when you drafted him. So there have been a lot of missed opportunities, I think, to make preemptive moves. Our quarterback situation, like why have we're rolling with Malik Willis, who I think nobody can look at that quarterback and see him as an NFL quarterback. I mean, Dobbs was impressive, but eventually not up to the pressure. And, we went into the playoffs last year with Logan Woodside being the number 2 behind Tannehill in a year where we were a Super Bowl contender. So I'm hoping to see a lot more preemptive moves in that.
JP, what are your thoughts? I mean, you mentioned the GM leaving, and it's going to be a whole different situation, obviously, with the new guy there. But the AJ Brown situation, I mean, love or hate the guy. I mean, he goes and he's playing for a Super Bowl now, and obviously there's a little bit of a salty taste in his mouth when he left, and didn't choose to leave. We got traded, but what are your thoughts about AJ Brown? Do you hope to see him go succeed? I know as a Titans fan, that's got to hurt seeing a guy like that go and see him have success with the Eagles.
Yeah, the only time I've really felt any sort of disdain toward AJ Brown was in that Eagles-Titans game earlier this year, and I furiously screaming at the TV at him, and then heard his interviews afterwards, and we love the guy, and I'm excited for him to get a chance to play in the Super Bowl because God knows it wasn't this team that was going to take him there. Like he could have played on the Titans, and they still would not be in a position to be in the Super Bowl. I think that you're talking about the changes that are made in the org. I think we would all like to see a little bit more, transparency in what's going on and why things are happening behind the scenes. Vrabel can be very closed. Losing my camera here, but Vrabel can be very closed off to giving any information out. And during the whole AJ Brown drama, everyone was saying John Robinson and Vrabel were saying he's going to be a Titan. He's going to be a Titan. And then Vrabel, AJ Brown is over there saying, I'm going to be a Titan. I'm going to be a Titan, and still tweeting wild stuff into the ether. And then, of course, he gets traded on draft day, which was not really a surprise to anybody. So, I'd like to see that. The big thing was that nobody will ever know, I think, what happened with the AJ Brown situation. Regardless of what anybody who was involved will say at this point in time, they were all telling us that he was on board to be a Titan and they wanted him there. And we could obviously see the signs of strain, but we didn't know who was the problem. We didn't know why he wasn't getting a contract. Everyone can look at the cap situation and make their own judgments about, it's pretty obvious that there we go. It's pretty obvious that we had some cap issues, but I think the big thing with AJ Brown was frustrating to see him go. I think most people blame the organization more than they blame AJ for that one.
Yeah, sure. I think Vrabel wanted him there. I think he was pretty clear about that, and I think he lost that argument. But those were the tweets. I forget if it was Jim Wyatt, who writes beat writer for the Titans, talked about there was a yelling match between Vrabel and John Robinson the day after the Eagles game, and a day after that, John Robinson's fired. So I can't imagine that the timing was as such that AJ didn't have a huge deal with that. And then to draft Treylon Burks in the first round, I think I like Treylon Burks all right, but I just
that's not AJ Brown.
Yeah. I mean, the grass isn't always greener, man. I mean,
it was very obvious that they lost the argument. They wanted to keep AJ Brown, realized they couldn't, and so the next best thing was to try and maybe grab a replacement for him.
Right, someone similar.
Yeah.
And I guess draft-wise, he was the most similar, but he's just no AJ Brown.
Yeah. No. And look, I mean, he could develop further, but I still think I've seen, AJ Brown do things that other wide receivers I just don't think can't. So I don't think it's purely development. I think it is just he's unique. And on top of it too, speaking to that screaming match that happened, when that trade happened, there's a video of them in the war room, and you can just see Vrabel got real quiet and uncomfortable. He starts kind of pacing the room. Yeah. He did not seem happy about that situation. And obviously it sounds like they continued to butt heads through the rest of the season, and that's probably why he's not there anymore. Do you trust Vrabel though? Right? Do you feel like he is kind of the answer as the head coach? Do you feel like he's the guy for the job? Or because I know obviously that they let go of their offensive coordinator, Todd Downing, who was not popular with you either. So who do you trust Vrabel out of, all of the people that are no longer with the organization to kind of steer the shit back to light?
It's really hard because before Mike Vrabel, we're talking Ken Wisenhunt, Mike Mularkey, Mike Munchak, Jeff Fisher, who did great things for us early. It's really hard to not be a little hesitant to say, oh, Vrabel's never going to get us over the top. I do have trust in Vrabel. I think that it is undeniable that he is able to get his players up to play in big games. And that's been a pretty consistent theme, is that nothing's ever pretty and they lose games that they shouldn't. But when push comes to shove, with the exception of the fall apart this year, the players like playing for him. Kevin Byard is taking pay cuts to make sure that other players can stay on the Mike Vrabel defense, right? When they needed to pay Jeffrey Simmons, Kevin Byard came in and said, I'm going to take a pay cut in order to get him, keep him on the roster. Or maybe it was Harold Landry, but either one of those players are guys that they wanted on the team. And so, the players love playing for him. And I don't think that his decision-making in game is not, he's a little bit risky sometimes, but I've never seen him just goof a game. I think my jury is still out, but the answer is going to be pretty apparent because now it's his show, right? Like, you can have all of these things in the past. You can blame John Robinson. You can blame injuries, which is also something that the Titans really need to look into. They announced they're putting in a synthetic field next season. I think there's an argument that'll make it worse, but I don't think it's the answer.
So are they renovating the stadium, or are they building a new one altogether?
They are building a new one that is going to be opening up in 2025 or 2026, and they are putting in a synthetic field into Nissan next week, next season.
So next season they'll have turf.
Right. And I'm a little suspicious that this is desperation plays. What problems do we have to solve? Well, offensive coordinator, he's gone. General manager, he's gone. Injuries. Well, what can we do there? Maybe if we put in a synthetic field that has been claimed to cut down those injuries. I think they're spending a lot of money to try to solve problems. And frankly, that's encouraging to me. Amy Strunk Adams, the owner, she's a heart of the city. And I think that she's going to do whatever it takes to commit to the team. But if, like her father, she has too much control over the team and we see a Jerry Jones situation start to happen, that could be detrimental. So, sure. Jerry's still out, but we're going to know, I think, by the end of next season, everyone will know whether Mike Vrabel is the guy or not, because this is his show. They put the keys in his hands, and he's going to either, drive it with this last leg of Derrick Henry's career, or he's going to flame out.
And what problem areas would you like to see addressed in the draft, and also with the quarterback situation? I think that's kind of like a nice bow on kind of the Titans situation. Is what would you like to see them do with this draft? They got a few pretty high picks. What problem areas do you see?
It's the offensive line. It's nothing. This team, if Vrabel's going to have the team is going to win in the trenches. And I know that people are itching for skill positions. They're itching for Derrick Henry's replacement. Those are such gambles. You don't know. You're not going to replace a Derrick Henry in the draft. You can see you're not going to replace an A.J. Brown in the draft. And, this nickel and dime piecing together old receivers onto the team isn't going to work in the long term. But if you're going to bring in a new quarterback, if you're going to have Tannehill try another season here, you've got to fix that offensive line. We got Lawan. I don't think they're going to pay him this summer.
He seems like he's already said that. Lawan's I'm going to get cut, man. He's like, I'm
exactly.
not going to pay him.
He knows his structure. He's smart enough.
He's openly said that.
Mm-hmm. And I don't think that he bears any bitterness toward the team. But I mean, we're talking about, we lost Roger Saffold to Buffalo last year. That was a big push. Ben Jones, the heart and soul of that offensive line, may retire. And if we have nobody to put in front, it doesn't matter if it's Derrick Henry, the next Peyton Manning, or what. Behind that offensive line, we're not going to have any success. So,
and free agency too, JP. If you have, there's some hot quarterbacks, in the market, and the Titans they have a marketable team. And like you're saying, if you don't have the offensive line to protect these guys, I mean, look what happened with Brady last year. And
that's exactly right, because Brady and Rodgers have both been on these short lists. Are they going to go to Tennessee? I mean, Derek Carr, right? Yeah. We get the irony of Derek Carr playing on Marcus Mariota's original team. It's kind of funny, but regardless of who this is, especially if it's an older vet, no one needs to copy the Colts model, but even if it's these old guys coming in to fill in, they're not mobile. They're not the young guys that are going to be able to deal with a terrible offensive line. And so that's where I think so many fan bases and the demand and the screaming from so many fan bases cause teams to invest in skill positions before they even have the infrastructure in the trenches to protect those assets. And we're seeing Derrick Henry's body get torn. I think this season and last season took probably a season or two off of his career.
He's probably on the decline, unfortunately. I think he's reached his peak, right? I think he's starting to, and that's just how running backs are, especially physical ones like that.
Yeah.
I got to say, I'm proud of both of you. I don't know if that's me rubbing off on both of you guys, but, investing in the trenches first, like that's some true
John,
talk right there,
you have said that for a long time. I will give John credit. He's always said that. JP, you're hit. I agree with you guys completely. And I think the best thing you can do is just look at the Philadelphia Eagles.
Right.
That's that's what they invested in. That's their core. That's their strength. That's what runs that team. And they're in the Super Bowl. And they're favorites to win the damn thing because of it.
And they didn't draft a quarterback until they grabbed Jalen Hurts, right? And when they grabbed Jalen Hurts, they had already built the offensive line.
Right. So if you could develop,
If you don't have a Andrew Luck or a Joe Burrow or a Jalen Hurts, someone who is going to be a difference maker that you can tell is going to be difference, it's okay to spend that draft capital on another position and wait for the guy to come around, right?
Look, we have Jared Goff right now, and our offensive line makes him look like a top 5 quarterback in the league. I know for a fact he's not a top 5 quarterback in the league, but he's protected and he has time and he gets his job done and he puts up top 5.
If we're being honest, guys, the talent level, there's the top 3 quarterbacks are just God-touched special talents, right? Everybody else is damn near the same. But if you put a good offensive line in front of a Jared Goff, Derek Carr, anybody in Ryan Tannehill, anybody in that skill range, they're going to play like a top 5 quarterback because it makes everything easier, less pressure, more time to read the coverages, more time to go through progression. The running game's usually there to help out. That is what makes a average to above average quarterback put into that, hey, MVP, playoff talk conversation. Jalen Hurts, I don't think is a great quarterback. If you put him on any other team in the league, I don't think he's an MVP candidate. But on the Eagles this year, he's a damn straight he's an MVP candidate because he dominated. And, I think that's a huge thing that you guys are saying. And I think that you hit it right on the nail there with the Titans. They have some pieces. They have a decent defense. They have a really good coach, I think, who can definitely get it done. And like you said, they have the culture's there and they just need somebody at the quarterback position that they can protect. And you'll have a chance. Yeah, I think that's you nailed it. I think that's the most important thing that they should invest in.
It's one of the reasons I am confident about Rand Carthen coming in and helping this team at GM. He built a really solid. You think about the San Francisco 49ers and their personnel. You think front 7. You think offensive line. These gritty running ugly teams. Then you throw in Deebo Samuels and Brandon Ayuk, and of course you can throw the ball around the yard. But their main offensive piece has been George Kittle for the longest time. So it's
they won 13 straight games with 4 different quarterbacks.
Exactly.
That's
So I've got
crazy
confidence.
stat. Yeah, and then so how has this postseason developed? Do you just watching all of these games and obviously now we got KC and the Eagles in the Super Bowl? Did things kind of go as expected? Maybe watching your division rivals and the Jaguars pull off that upset. How have you kind of enjoyed the past few weeks?
So I'm going to make sure to say I was at a bachelor party and a wedding from Thursday night all the way through Sunday night. So I'm very thankful that this wasn't the year the Titans got to the AFC Championship. Where I have strong words to say to my buddy, but so I watched 0 football this weekend. I have no idea what happened in the championship other than just the headlines and scores I've seen. But I can comment on the wild card and the division round, and I think that what we're seeing is it is what we see. The AFC it's the AFC, and then there's everything else. And the games in the NFC have been good, and they're good teams. And I don't think there's like when you take either the 49ers or the Eagles and you put them against either the Chiefs or the Bengals, like either of those are going to be good games. It's going to be anybody's ball game. But getting out of the AFC when you've got the Jaguars getting in there and knocking off teams like that, like it is hard to get through. And then you got to go play Joe Burrow the next week, right? Like the Bills, it's wild to see everybody complaining about Josh Allen and everybody having these problems. And it's like, this is a meat grinder. And it's a little surprising. It was a little surprising to see Buffalo go down at home and everything like that. But, loved watching the Bills and Dolphins play. It was a bunch of good games. So I think the games themselves showed to me that, whatever's going on, the AFC is very strong and it's very competitive. And the NFC, you've got your surprises.
It's top heavy. It's top heavy.
Yeah. It's very top heavy. You've got juggernauts, and then it always hurts the NFC's clout to have the Cowboys included in one of those juggernaut teams because we know what they're going to do every year. So,
we can throw a little Cowboys uppercut in there. Listen, we're a Cowboys hate show. And
I'm in the right place.
Yeah, you came to the right place. But yeah, we talked about it just even before you came on, JP, about this was one of the topics we were going to get to, but it's a good time to get into it. The Eagles' path. Kind of questionable. I mean, I'm not trying to discredit the Eagles because I actually think they have a very good chance of winning the Super Bowl, and they've been the best team in the league all year long. But I mean, they played a fraudulent Giants team, obviously, and then you play a 49ers team that we really thought could give them a game, and they get an early touchdown because of a missed call on a dropped ball, and then the very next series you're starting, your third string quarterback, but your starting quarterback that day tears a ligament in his arm, can't feel his arm. And then the backup quarterback gets a concussion like a quarter later. I mean, it's not much of a challenge to get to the Super Bowl with the path they've had. I don't know if that hurts them in the long run. I mean, they still dominated the games, and you have to give them credit. But, I mean, is that one of the easiest paths you've seen for a team to get to the Super Bowl in your recent memory? I mean, I was trying to think of an easier ride.
I'm trying to remember who the Steelers played before the Jaguars in the AFC Championship game, because if you meet the Jaguars in the AFC Championship, your ride's probably pretty easy. But
Bortles,
no, that is definitely Bortles forever. It's definitely they're not as tested as people would like them to be, but I am kind of over this concept. You win that many NFL football games in a season, you're a good team. And seeing them, like they've got weapons, they got real weapons that any team is going to have a hard time stopping. Like, sorry, KC, you're playing on a neutral site. You're not in Arrowhead. You're going to have to stop A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Jalen Hurts without the benefits of home field advantage. I think, I don't know. I can't say fraudulent, but we'll see what happens in the Super Bowl coming up.
Yeah, sure.
I wish I had a hotter take for you, but after that Titans-Eagles games, I've watched very few Eagles games.
Well, I don't think that Mark or I are in the boat of fraudulent. I mean, I've been beating the Eagles drum all season, really. But
and I've been beating them up. I have been hating on the Eagles, but I'm giving them their credit for getting there.
Well, and that's what I'm trying to say is, regardless, I think they can be a really good team, and also you can, recognize the fact that their path to the Super Bowl was very easy too. And I think both things can be true.
I think what has happened a lot of time, when they get up to play in a position to get a game that proves themselves, you're dealing with a third string quarterback, right? You are expecting to go up against. You're waiting for that first round home game in the divisional round, and you get the Giants, right? Who went up to Minnesota and showed everybody what Minnesota does in the playoffs. So it's every time they've had an opportunity, it feels like they get the short end of the stick in terms of their opposition. So can they stay hot in the face of adversity when they get punched in the nose a couple Sundays from now? We'll see. But they definitely have the talent that's there. I don't think that's been a question.
Sure. Now, I also want to just transition into the Aussie rules football, and I just want to tell like a quick story. So, I met JP working down in Texas for a couple months, and he and I became pretty good buds pretty quickly. If you can't tell by both of our appearances, we're also pretty big metal fans. Yeah. So
I was gonna say the flow and the facial hair there. That's like, I just couldn't do that. I can't pull that off.
But one thing that
carded in forever.
One thing that JP introduced me to was Australian football. He had a couple of us over and just kind of like explained how the sport works. And like it was the summer of COVID, so dry season as far as probably one of the driest seasons as far as sports went in general. We didn't have really a whole lot to watch. And so we're watching this sport and I'm like, holy crap, these guys are beating the shit out of each other and have no pads on whatsoever. And so I was just going to kind of pull up a picture of a field, and JP, I'm just going to kind of let you take the reins on explaining how this weird sport works. And maybe we can get a couple new fans to watch this summer.
Yeah.
I surely enjoyed it.
Oh, awesome. Okay. So this is the oval. This is Aussie rules football, right? So just to get a sense of what you're looking at, take a look at that arc, right? Looks like a 3-point line on either end of the field. That's 50 meters. That's more than 50 yards. And that's about a third of the field, right? A little less than a third of a field. The field is massive, and we play with 18 guys on each team.
Holy shit.
Yeah, so you typically 18 that splits up into 3 6s. So you typically have 6 guys in your defensive side of the field, 6 guys in your offensive side of the field, 6 guys in the middle. The object of the game at the end, in where these goal squares are, at the end of the field, there are 4 posts sticking straight out of the ground. I don't know. Yes, see these posts. Perfect. I knew you were going to be more prepared than that. Vocal, that's good. Yeah, so this is an Aussie rules football field. As you can see, it's massive. The player's real tiny there. The object of the game is to kick the ball without it being touched by anyone through these middle posts. If you hit the middle posts without the ball being touched, that is 6 points. That's called a goal. If you miss and you kick it through the outside, or if you kick it and the ball gets touched or batted across even through the middle, that is called a behind, and it's only worth 1 point. So you can tell how accurately a team kicks with the opportunities that they have is pretty important. So we move the ball up and down this field. There are only 4 players on the bench in the professionals. So like cardio is a huge part of this game, which is wild that I'm involved in it because that's been my least favorite activity all my life. You move the ball up and down the field by kicking it to each other. It's just it looks like a football. It's a little bit fatter. It's a little bit more round, bouncier, but you kick the ball to each other, or you handball it. It's like a volleyball punch. So the 2 ways, you're not allowed to throw it. You're not allowed, even backwards, you're not allowed to throw it. You have to either punch the ball to each other and run with it, or you have to kick the ball to your teammates, right? So there's here's a little bit, some abuse of players.
Can you like hold it and run with it at all?
Yes, you can hold it and run with it. You can move in any direction. There's no offsides or anything. You can only run with the ball up to 15 meters. So you can't just pick up the ball and sprint with it. If you have the space to do that and you're running every 15 meters, if you want to keep carrying the ball, you actually have to bounce the football-shaped ball off the ground back into your own hands to be able to keep running with it. That's one of the ways you can do it.
And is this full contact? Like how does this?
Yeah.
So you can just get lit up trying to punt the ball.
Yes, absolutely. That happens a lot. Some of the biggest hits would be the biggest roughing the kicker calls you'd ever see in your life. You're just going for it, peeling back, making that kick, and someone clears you out, and there's absolutely no penalty.
And there's no padding.
No padding. Nope, not at all. One of the things that makes it a little bit different than rugby, right? You see the big guys. The reason I can play Aussie football and not so much rugby, you see the big guys with the thick necks playing rugby. In Aussie rules football, if you are caught holding the ball, it's a penalty called holding the ball. If you're running with it and you've had a chance to get rid of it, whether it's punching it, kicking it, or anything like that, and you get tackled or you get slung in a way that makes you have to throw the ball or get rid of it the wrong way, then the play stops and the other team gets the ball. they get to have what's called a free kick. So just picture in your head ultimate frisbee, right? When you play an ultimate frisbee, you're running, you go up, you catch the disc, and you have to stop right there. So in Aussie rules football, if you go up and you catch another player's kick, someone kicks you the ball and you catch it, or in this case with a penalty, what's called a free kick, if you get that free kick, nobody can tackle you. You can back up off the mark. It's a little spot on the field, imaginary spot on the field where you caught the ball. You get to back up and kick the ball or play the ball forward from there. So in Aussie rules football, when you get tackled, if you're tackled with the ball, the other team gets it, and it's a big change of possession, right? It's a big momentum game up and down the field. You can be playing all the offense in the world, and just like that, someone else will get the ball, transition it all the way down the field. But because you get penalized for holding on to the ball, you don't have a lot of the same shoulders down, driving into piles. You're not squaring up with each other, running into it. But there are a lot more like sling tackles. There's a lot more almost clothesline type plays of people trying to stop the other player real quick.
So JP, we had so I played college football at Central Michigan. Our punter when I was there was his name was Jack Sheldon. He was recruited because he played professional Aussie football. He's from Australia.
Yeah.
So he came as a punter, and I think, and I'm not 100% sure, maybe but in like real football, the punting, I don't know if you've seen some of the, like where you jog a few steps right or left and you punt to kind of buy yourself time. I think they took that from this sport. And so absolutely. we introduced it at Central. It's not just us. I mean, a lot of colleges and pro teams are doing it now because it allows time for your coverage team to get down there. But Jack was an awesome punter because he did this his whole life. And we brought him in and he was an awesome punter for us. He was athletic enough to do trick plays and all kinds of shit like that. So that was just kind of a cool thing. He always talked about. I had no idea what the hell he was talking about with his accent. And thing like that.
Mark. The biggest thing though is that you hate kickers. Like you've said on the podcast how you don't really respect kickers.
I don't hate all kickers. I
have had that thought recently too.
I don't hate all kickers.
I don't trust them. I don't trust them.
And there's a lot of them that are like a joke. And
but I was going to say,
did you see what Joe Staley said to that?
We'll get there. We'll get there.
You're a kicker.
You're literally a kicker. But what I was going to say though is that these are kickers you can respect because these guys are also used to making open
these dudes
field
are badass.
tackles.
These dudes are badass. I mean, if a kicker, see, that's what I'm talking about though. There's the kickers that I respect are the kickers that will, they'll pop right up after getting popped on a punt and be like, yeah, try that again. You know what I mean? Like, those are the rare things in real football that you see kickers do. Most of the kickers in American football are not tough guys. They're not badass. They're just like, we played soccer. We're like specialists. Yeah, it's, you bring a guy like Jack Sheldon along or JP from, Aussie football and the real football, and they're like, yeah, I'm a badass, dude. Come hit me. Like, I'll go make a tackle. That's what I'm looking for in kickers. I wish more of them were like that.
Yeah, Mark, I definitely during the summer I'll have to sit you down and we'll watch JP's a Carlton Blues fan. That's his team.
That's his team.
Yeah, and we'll have to watch a game or two because you will be like, at first it's like you're overstimulated. You're like, what am I looking at? And then once you start to understand the game, you're like, this is awesome.
I have an interesting take, JP. I want to hear what you think of this because you play the sport. Me and John are not as familiar. Obviously, there's a concussion problem with real American football, right? Professionally, college, youth, it's getting a lot of heat. CT is becoming a bigger thing, a bigger problem, especially as they do more research into it. I feel like without helmets and less padding, there's probably less head injuries. Do you think that might be the case in Aussie football compared
100%.
to tackle American football? Because you're not going to use your head if you're not protected, right? I mean, it's just like they feel like you can use your head when you're playing American football. Right. I don't know how many times I've done that where it's like, well, I'm wearing a helmet.
Yeah. The sports, the Aussie football and American football are so different that it would be hard to make that comparison. The hits in Aussie football, first of all, there are so many more of you on the field, and the hits they're not every play, so you take fewer shots. But when you're looking at rugby, you can look at a lot of the same types of hits, offensive linemen plowing into each other, running backs going in. And while they do have head trauma in rugby, it's not the same It's not the same as American football. Now you got a little bit of cross vectors, the blind side hits and defenseless receiver kind of plays very unique to American football and where the players are coming from in the context.
And those are high speed collisions.
High speed collisions, but I think that look, I didn't play football, but in every game I've ever played, when you have an advantage, you use it as a weapon, right? I think it's ridiculous to think that you're going to put pads to protect these guys on football players. Think about the football players you knew in college, right? Yeah. Right? Other than the nice offensive linemen who are the best people on earth. But like the football players, you put a helmet on them, you put pads on them and expect them not to use that to their full advantage. Like they're going for it.
Yeah, it's not as much for their protection as it is like, oh, I can run through somebody right now and hardly feel
it. It gives you a sense of like, invincibility.
Exactly.
Like some of the stuff I've tried to do with the helmet, and it's just like, it's just not a good idea. But you think you're safe because you got the face mask and it's shielding your face, and then you just assume that you're protected, and that's just not the case a lot of the time.
You look at tackles in rugby, you look at tackles in Aussie rules football, and they're not the same because you don't have that sense of invulnerability where you can just run straight through somebody and have no consequences. So I'm completely with you. I have been for quite a while. Yeah.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing because there's been murmurs of people professionally talking about, do we go back to those old school leather helmets that aren't as protective? And
just like, no helmets whatsoever.
Probably would be safe. It probably would be safer though. I mean, if a safety's not going to lower his neck and spear someone in the head as a weapon, if he's not wearing a helmet, you got to be insane to do that.
John, I would be interested on your take on the offensive lineman perspective on that one, because while you're right, I think the contact out in the open field would be a lot different. You're adjusting your body differently. When you're running up on somebody, there's another sport that I play in Bowling Green that has a lot more people trying to run straight over the top of each other. And when you're sitting there and this guy's coming towards you, my brother-in-law is a big man. And when he's playing my team and he's trying to run over the top of me, I'm just sitting there. But I'm adjusting my body to make sure that I've like hitting him in the right spot and getting the turn right. And I wouldn't have to do that if I had a helmet.
Yeah, well, I mean,
the offensive line perspective, John.
The weird thing is that offensive line, like even in, my dad played in a flag football league for a little bit. And, Mark and I did Veer Camp together, which was helmets only. We didn't have any pads on besides that. And offensive line is full contact for those things. And like,
basically,
you'll get, maybe it's not supposed to be. It's full contact.
Yeah,
100%.
It's full contact.
But you'll end up with like bruises on your chest and stuff from getting pops like you would. That kind of looked cool on the camera doing that. Like it's different, right? Like the hitting is different, where it's like you're using the full weight of your body against another dude that's the same size, and then at that point, it's just like it kind of boils down to leg drive, and so like. If everybody's kind of going with that kind of force and pressure, I really don't think like pads make the biggest difference. Now, that's probably very different in the NFL because the guys are literally twice as big as the guys that I was used to pushing around in high school, and significantly stronger too. Honestly, they could probably break a rib just with the way that they pop pads, right? Like I don't think that'd be an overstatement in any sense.
It's a lot of like, John, it's a lot of like the, shorter, less high speed collisions, but those add up, and with the helmets on, obviously they're using a lot of face masks, a little bit of neck strength as you're trying to balance somebody, because it's core. I mean, everything goes into it when you're blocking somebody because you don't know where that defender is going to go.
Yeah, exactly. You're just trying to throw all your weight.
Yeah, it might not be like a blackout, like, blindside hit a lot of the time for those linemen, but I mean, they're using their heads and their necks a decent amount. It's just you don't maybe see it as much.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I wonder how that would affect
question.
It. Yeah,
it's a good. And JP, last question for you before we let you go here. Who do you got 2 weeks from now on Sunday in Arizona?
My brother-in-law grew up in a Kansas City Chiefs household that was as intense as our Titans household. Obviously, Justin Maloney, my boy Jaloney. He's a huge Eagles fan. He's going to be in my wedding. So interests on both sides. And I don't have as much faith in this Kansas City team as I have had in the past, but then they just went out and beat the Bengals. Like I have wanted to say all season that this Chiefs team is at the end of its curve when it comes to, obviously we've seen it with the talent at wide receiver, when we've seen it with some of their offensive line. And, we've seen the problems from the Super Bowls in the past. But I don't know. It's Patrick Mahomes screaming at somebody that his ankle, that he's not going to be allowed back on the field at his ankle. And I wouldn't be surprised if I'm going to give it to one team. I'm going to say Chiefs by 4. It's probably what's going to happen.
There we go. I like it. JP, thanks so much for coming on, dude. I think not only did you have a lot of great insight about NFL, but it was really fun learning a little bit about Aussie rules as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, man. You were an awesome guest, man. Good meeting you.
Great. Yeah. Thanks,
y'all. Later. Peace.
Take care.
See ya.
Yeah. So, and I think we kind of like touched on some of the things that we planned on talking about, after JP hopped off, but this Eagles offensive line, and really this was just going to be a huge trenches game, period. Right. And we said that over and over again, going into this game, is that the front seven defensively on both teams are really good. The offensive line on both teams are really good. And whoever comes out on top is going to win. Now, it was a way easier win for the Eagles because the quarterback situation. But, Mark sent me this video, and this is exactly the type of shit that we're talking about. This is how you win games, right?
People don't realize.
Look at where this defensive line starts, right? So this is what? Is this the tackle right here?
Yeah.
It's taking this block on, right? Let me see before the play starts. Yeah,
no, it's the guard.
Dude, guards are freaking huge in the NFL. That's nuts. Anyway, yeah. So that's the guard taking this block on. Watch where this contact first starts and then where he ends up by the time that the run goes by him.
Obviously, he gets a combo from Kelsey. But if you look at Kelsey's, it's not just the physicality, John. It's the mentality. It's the I'm going to kick your ass. And it's how smart they're doing it. Watch Kelsey
and then immediately go second level
and knows that he's going second level. Look at the angle he takes, though, right?
Look at it. So good.
He creates an angle so that Greenlaw can't get outside of him, right? And that is just, you can't really have that instinctively. That's just taught and coached and repeated over and over again. And this is just team offensive line play, man. Combo block, kick ass, get to second level with a good angle, and allow the running back to follow you.
Right.
And when you have a Hall of Famer doing it.
San Fran's defense was healthy this game. Okay. We know what happened with the quarterback situation, but that is a full grown 300-pound defensive tackle just getting rocked by 10 yards, not even close to the play by the time that the running back is at the line of the scrimmage. Not even close. He's all the way on the other side.
And it just comes down to fundamentals too. Pad level, right? Look where Kelsey's pad level is compared to that defender. You don't see guys in the NFL get pushed around like this very often.
Even his pad level when he takes on this block with Greenlaw, dude, he's lower than him, and he's probably 4 or 5 inches taller than him.
Yeah, it's impressive, but this is what the Eagles do. This is what they've done all year. Not only that, but if you look at the backside guard, John, it's the little things look at the backside guard's footwork and his hand positioning to make sure that Armstead can't cross his face and blow up the zone play, right? See how he reaches and is just basically I don't have to kick your ass, but if you cross my face, this play's broken up. And he's able to turn the body and make sure that he can't get across his face, which is really hard to do because they're slanting in that direction. It's incredible. They do this consistently. This happened all game long. I was completely wrong about the RPOs as well. Fred Warner and Greenlaw and those guys. Instead of being the natural aggressive downhill linebackers that they are, they basically just stood there. And you can see it on this clip. Watch Warner, who's kind of off the screen here, John, if you want to show him. He's left of Greenlaw. So if you pause it at the beginning.
Right here.
You pause at the very beginning, okay? And then when you press play, watch him not move because he's watching Jalen Hurts. He doesn't know. He literally hasn't moved until now.
Yeah, literally the play's probably gone on for about a second.
Because of the RPO,
hands are
right?
Still on his knees.
Still on his knees. And that's not how he plays typically, but because of the worry of Jalen Hurts pulling that thing or throwing it after pulling it, it froze them. I was completely wrong on my RPO.
Dude, when you sent me this, I sat like what we're doing right now. I sat here and watched it 100 times. Where I was like, "This is
because there's so much, and it's like this is one play, but you could go down and break. There's 30 plays offensively that the Eagles ran where you could find just absolute bullying happening. But it's so much bigger than that. It's how they play as a unit up front. The running backs, their vision, the ability to follow these blocks, and the patience that you have to have with that. And then obviously Jalen Hurts and, the play calling that goes along with that, and the threat of him pulling it and running it. It makes a aggressive defense hesitant, and you can't play defense hesitant.
Yeah, absolutely. And then not to mention the fact that then all of a sudden they don't have any time off at the field because their offense is getting 3 and outs, and that's just a perfect storm, right? Like it just became the Eagles game from that point on, period. And like I said, it was a bummer because I thought these were two juggernauts going at it, and I think the 49ers got a fair shake. And that sucks, but it is what it is. Injuries do happen. We started this episode being like, man, maybe there should be 58 players on the roster or whatever. JP's telling us Aussie rules, there's 4 guys on the bench.
Yeah, but you got 18 on the field. I mean, could you imagine?
That'd be nuts. But yeah, and then KC Bengals, right? And you heard little whisperings of this, I think, in the San Fran game, but it didn't make a difference. And then you get to KC Bengals, and then the conversations got real loud about officiating. And look, I think there's 2 things to this. One, I think, and we've had this conversation before, like officials should be full-time. They should be training in the off season. There's a lot of ways that this multi-billion-dollar business can improve the officiating that matters on these multi-billion-dollar games. Like, period. This is a billion-dollar industry. Millions of people watch these games. It should not be crazy to say that these refs should not be part-time guys. Second thing is that I know they assemble like all-star crews for the playoffs. That's what they do, is they take some of the like best guys from each crew and like assemble what they call like all-star crews for these big games. I don't know if that's a helpful strategy because these guys aren't used to working with one another. And just in the same way that team chemistry is important, that's also important for referees and knowing what everybody's role is, right? And then I just saw so much freaking yellow on the field this past weekend that it made me sick. I was just tired of it. It broke up the play. It makes the game feel a lot more sloppy, and it's not an enjoyable watching experience. And I know the players hate it too. So that's John, what I got to say about it.
Do you know that do you know how the ref the grades work? Like, that they get graded by so they do their job, they referee a game, and this happens in college and professionally. They get a grade from other crews, from both teams, from coaching staffs, and the coaches actually can put in clips with complaints, and they actually watch film on how to get better, like the referees do, and they get graded, and that's how they decide these all-star, ref groups that you're talking about. But my question is, if you do that, how the hell do you have guys missing calls like that in championship level games? Like you said, they should just be full-time. What's the point of having, because what does it do for the Bengals to put their complaints in this week? It does nothing for them. Their season's over. And there's a lot of arguable calls. I will say, I'm sure we'll get into some of these calls, but I will say the Chiefs, they deserved to win. The Bengals had every opportunity to move down the field. They had the ball in a tie game, I think 3 times. Joe Burrow, 2 interceptions. He was sacked a lot. Like, there was a lot of things that Cincinnati could have done to take over that game. I mean, Patrick Mahomes did something we rarely see him do. He turns the ball over unforced at midfield within a tie game, and
that couldn't do anything. Play.
You can't do anything about it. Like, it wasn't penalties that caused that issue. You know,
and that's why I get annoyed with like people saying the NFL is rigged and stuff like that. It's like, again, like, what scale would you need to be at to rig a game?
It would have to be. It's funny to talk about, and I think that in ways there's definitely agendas being pushed, and like I think that Patrick Mahomes, what do you see commercials of Patrick Mahomes all the time? State Farm, right? What's the stadium in Arizona? State Farm Stadium. You know what I mean?
I actually didn't know that, but
there's a lot of agendas, but
I know there's agendas, and I know that there's always drama. Don't get me wrong. I think it's more so the fact that it's like, Okay, wait. So you're telling me these refs can't even figure out their ass from a hole in the ground, but they're smart enough that not only can they fix games, but also everybody's getting paid billions of dollars to keep hush about it. Like, let's come on now. But the thing is that I honestly don't think that the refereeing in either game totally was responsible for the outcome. Definitely not 49ers.
Luckily.
Right. Probably not KC Bengals. But the thing is that what it does do is change the pace. And again, it changes the pace for the players. It changes the pace for the viewers. Like, let's not have sloppy football games and the AFC and NFC championship. And let's not have sloppy football games primarily because the officials can't figure out when to review plays, how to keep a freaking flag in their pocket for like maybe one play, like calling games evenly. And it's just like,
it changes the feel, man. It changes the feel. And it obviously you feel a little bit for Cincinnati fans, but again, I think Kansas City earned that win. You can't completely blame officiating, luckily, but we've seen games in the past where we've seen really good games. Talk about the Washington and Giants game that we went on a rant about, right? That was a defensive battle all game long. And you get to the last play of the game and you choke, you miss a call that was so blatant. And that affected the Commanders' season, man. And I don't know. It's got to be fixed. The Devontae Smith play is a huge, was a drop.
That's 7
ball.
points.
That's undisputable. Indisputable. It was a dropped ball. And from one camera angle, it looks like a catch. And from the other, it's a clear drop. The fact that we have to blame Kyle Shanahan for not noticing that from when he's literally 100 yards away from it. And you have to guess that by him signaling this, it means hurry up and get on the ball.
Isn't that what the Sky Cam is supposed to do, though? Is that then New York can call in and be like, hey, we should review that play.
That's the idea, but it happens, they get up and go so fast. And it's just like, I feel like you should just have your referees. And then I think you should have guys on the sidelines that are part of the crew that just look for little details like, did you get your feet in? Was it a forward pass? That are watching for certain things, and all they have to do is on a microphone say, hey, I think this was a drop. I think we should stop play and look at this. So that it's not.
It's so easy. It's
so
really
easy to get it right. And we could speed
bad.
up, the review process doesn't have to take 10 minutes. And it's just like, dude, look at the camera. Most of the time within one or two views of a certain angle, the average fan even knows whether it was a catch or a drop or a fumble or whatever. It's stupid. I don't know how you have a $1 billion industry that runs pretty smoothly on its own that can't figure this side of it out. One interesting thing about this game, John, I want to talk about was, and I've said this before, the Andy Reid, the draft class was awesome. And I will get into that, but I want to talk about one thing before this, John. It's the future of offensive football, right? They tried to do a hook and ladder where they threw it to Kelsey. He caught it and was going to pitch it to another guy downfield. And I think we're going to see more and more of that as the future of offensive football develops. I mean, it's essentially option football. It's like triple option, right? You throw the ball, you catch the ball downfield. Instead of having a pitch back in the backfield, like how we did on Inside Veer, you have an option play from a former quarterback like Kelsey downfield, and it just puts defenses in a whole different, I don't know how you prepare for that. If you
using your athletes to do just stuff that other literally you couldn't do unless you were an NFL.
It just becomes a pitch back 20 yards downfield with no one behind the safety. Because if the safety comes to tackle Kelsey, and because they almost got that, I mean, it was a bad pitch, but that would have been another 20 yards gained. And I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see other teams pull stuff out like that. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see something like that in the Super Bowl. And it doesn't have to be a last play of the game like Dallas was trying to do with Zeke at center. I think we're going to see crazy shit like that on regular downs where they do laterals and shit, similar to what Aussie football and rugby do. I think we're going to see stuff like that creep into the NFL and college and high school levels of American football. And I'm kind of excited to see where that goes.
I don't disagree with you because there's plenty of teams that ran stuff like that this past season and it worked. It undisputedly worked.
Dude, the Lions against the Packers did it,
right?
There's a lot of shit, and I think it's just going to continue to develop and grow because offensive minds move a little bit faster, right? Defensively, you have to react to what the O does. So the offense is kind of what always is pushing new shit into the football world in terms of scheme. And I think it's really cool to see stuff like that. I couldn't believe when I saw that live. I was like it just is so exciting to see. It's the future.
And, like, hats off to Andy Reid, because like he
Geniuses,
is the one
man.
that is just doing like evil genius stuff. Like,
he has reinvented offensive football. Like every year he's been, a coach, and it's just so awesome. Some of the stuff you see him do, and then it's a copycat thing.
Right.
We've seen his entire team do a circle around Mahomes and then line up and go. I mean, we've seen hook and ladder. Like, he just does crazy shit.
Bring around the Rosie, yeah.
Really
and
fun to see.
I quickly want to, because look, draft classes are huge, right? And I think one thing that's got Mark and I so stoked about being Lions fans is that Brad Holmes for 2 years now, like top to bottom, has had really solid, productive draft classes. And like an argument that I've heard about that is, well, yeah, their roster was depleted. Like, of course they're going to play their young guys, and of course those young guys are going to have to make plays at some point because they're seeing more play time. You can't make that argument about KC, right? KC has a ton of vets, ton of guys making big money, weapons everywhere, and look at what the rookies did in this game, right? 6 tackles, sack, 3 catches, punt return, 4 tackles, 2 interceptions. Obviously, Cheo's been nuts the entire season, but obviously, almost at a 100-yard game. Like, this team was utilizing their rookie talent just as well, if not better than the Lions were all season. And so you can't make that argument that, like, oh, like you're just seeing that, like good rookie capital paying off quicker because of the fact that their team sucks. KC doesn't suck, and they're finding ways to use their rookies in really effective ways. And that's, huge hats off to them for finding a way to scheme them up.
It's a very big part of, you don't go to 5 AFC championship games in a row at home by coincidence. It doesn't happen by accident. It's not just Patrick Mahomes. There's more to it. They've surrounded him with an offensive line that can protect him. And when they had the offensive line kind of fall apart, they reinvested in it and got new guys. Right. When you lose a guy like Tyreek Hill and you don't want to pay him a gigantic contract because it would eat up all your cap, you find guys like Juju and you draft Sky Moore and you bring in Kadarius Toney and guys that maybe aren't Tyreek Hill, but when you mix them with guys like Mahomes and Kelsey, it allows them to be in matchups that are favorable to them. And it just seems like every time you watch the Chiefs play, all these different weapons, I wouldn't say any of their weapens are great besides Kelsey, but you're just waiting for one of them to explode and have a big game.
Right. And every single time it's like, who are these guys? It's like, what's going on?
MVS, right? Right. Marquez, he had a huge game. And we've only seen him do that a couple times in his career. Like with Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay, we saw him have a few big games, right? But he's always just kind of been like an average, a couple plays a game guy. He had a huge game, man. Was making crazy catches. Had a touchdown last week. He had a touchdown this week. Like he was their star on offense. And you just never know what is going to be, who's going to step up. If you put 2 guys on Kelsey, who's the guy that's going to step up? Is it going to be Pacheco? Is it going to be Kadarius Toney? Is Juju going to have a day? Sky Moore, the rookie, is he going to make a play? He had a huge punt return to set him up for that game-winning field goal. It's just awesome to see. And they just utilize their guys and they coach everybody well so that if dudes do go down, it's next man up. And they always seem to be ready. And I think that's part of why you see consistent success out of the Chiefs for the last 5 years. It's more than just Patrick Mahomes, right?
No, I agree.
I think that's a big thing of like what the Bills are missing. They're missing that consistency and depth from smaller guys. It can't just be Diggs.
Yeah. It's the same thing that you saw, during the Brady era with Belichick. And why that lasted for 15 years is because Belichick, like a madman, would go and draft guys that I think half the people didn't even have on their radar.
Belichick would find dudes that look like me and you and and find ways to have them become Pro Bowl receivers and running backs. It's so crazy. It's just part of what it is, right? If you fit into the system, if you're coached well and you get all the tools to be successful and you have a quarterback that can get you the ball, that's the recipe for success. And
exactly.
It's impressive to see.
And then, so I think we're, about an hour in now. So I'm going to take a look at one more tweet. We're going to talk about some of the coaching changes and then kind of wrap it up, since obviously there isn't a game to look forward to, or at least a real one to look forward to this coming weekend. So obviously pretty entertaining Twitter beef. Kayvon Thibodeau, who's the rookie edge rusher for the Giants, for those that do not know, was talking some trash about the 49ers And then Joe Staley comes in and says, "You're a flash player who gets bodied by average tackles. Don't let the New York media affect you too much." Kayvon hits him back with like the "Who are you?" basically.
Like, who are you? Like, are you joking me? Joe Staley's a Hall of Famer. Like,
yeah, shut up, dude. And then he goes, "Enough for you to respond. Congrats on your 4 sacks this year, though. That's huge, unbelievable numbers."
And then, did you see Michael Strahan's response to Joe Staley?
Yeah. So then Strahan's response to Joe Staley. I don't think I saw that. No.
Michael Strahan quoted that tweet, the one about 4 sacks, and said, "I believe I had 2.5 on you your rookie year. Don't come at Kayvon after his rookie season." Like he isn't going to be special. And then he also have to put out the "you're a kicker" response.
Yep.
But I just think I don't know when people will learn. Like if
you're
a not,
kicker, that's it.
Yeah, that's hilarious. If you're gonna talk shit on Twitter and stuff, and your team's already been eliminated, like I just don't know what you think's gonna happen, right? Or if like you're Eli,
that would be like Eli Apple getting on right now. And
Eli Apple's mom deleted her Twitter this past week and probably well deserved that she had to do that, because
I don't think he's tweeted since they lost too. And it's like, so you're gonna talk like all this shit, and then he hasn't tweeted since they lost. It's like, what are you doing, man?
And Micah Parsons is tweeting stuff and has been exposed a few times. Like, I just don't know why you can't tweet stuff before a game or after you've been eliminated. Now, what I love seeing is like Travis Kelce and the shit he was saying after the game. That was awesome.
Sit down and shut up, jabroni.
Sit down and know your role.
That's what it was. Sit down, know your role.
The mayor of Cincinnati. You have to remember, Kelce played ball at Cincinnati in college with his brother. Like, he's a Cincinnati guy. And like, for him to call out the mayor like that, and honestly, it's kind of what you deserve if you're the mayor. Like, you're talking shit to
an NFL player. You were literally talking.
I don't know why. I just don't know why people talk shit before a game, especially like that. And then, the Burrow had my ass comment. And I mean, you saw so many guys say it. Chris Jones and, Willie Gay after the game. And like, all these guys were defending Mahomes. You guys thought.
It clearly had them fired up. Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah. It's, I don't know when people will learn. I love it. I mean, I love the trash talk. It's entertaining. It's fun to see. I mean, it's pretty cool to see NFL guys tweeting stuff and at each other and arguing. You just see the competitive nature come out, and it just makes the games that much more exciting with matchups and whatnot. I'm wondering if we're going to see any Kelce shit talking going on brother to brother. I know I would talk crazy shit to either of my brothers if I was playing against them in the Super Bowl.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, you have to.
I'm sure Jim Harbaugh still doesn't hear the end of it. So,
Oh yeah, he can't sit at dinner. You can't sit at dinner and not hear something about it.
Yeah, exactly. And then look, 2 big coaching hires. Sean Payton, the Saints got a 1st round and a 2nd round pick for him, and the Denver Broncos traded, I guess, the rest of their high round picks and a lot of their money, because the owner of Walmart owns the Broncos, to go get Sean Payton. That's crazy, but I think it's a perfect fit, right? Sean Payton coached up an undersized quarterback to be incredibly effective in a system. I think that's what they're going for here. We'll see what happens as far as wins go, because I'm not totally sure that it's really going to translate to them like being a playoff team next year based off of what I saw. But if anybody's going to be able to fix Russell Wilson, I do think Sean Payton has the highest chance.
I disagree, John. I don't know if this is a good hire. It's the best hire you can possibly get for the Broncos, but I think you've just made a shitty situation even tougher, because you had to give up more to get him. You have to pay him a shit ton of money. I don't think Russell Wilson is fixable right now. I don't think that you can. The only comparison really with him and Breeze is their stature, their size. But in terms of like the mental side of the quarterback position, Drew Brees was light years ahead of Russell Wilson, and Russell Wilson has thrived off of just his athleticism and extending plays like he did in Seattle all those years. That wasn't really Sean Payton's thing in New Orleans. It was pocket passer, it was Breeze, it was accuracy, it was on-time throws, going through your progressions, avoiding sacks, And Russell Wilson, we saw him try a similar offensive style like that last year, and it wasn't a fit for him.
He wasn't locked in. Yeah.
I don't know, man. It scares me. I hope it works out because I like Sean Payton, but this is a hard ask of him to come in and turn this.
It's a reach.
Around.
I mean, and look, Denver clearly looked desperate to do. I mean,
and this is an act of desperation. Yeah.
They traded away the rest of their draft capital and they paid him probably upwards of $25 million a year in order to get him there. They want him bad, and they're hoping that he can fix this team. Like
you're right. If anyone can do it, it is him. I just don't think that anyone can do it. I don't even think Sean Payton can do it. There's just
it's rough, man. It's really
rough. It's a tough time in Denver.
And then the other one to touch on, which has been highly praised by Mark and I, is D'Amico Ryans, who's the DC of the 49ers, now the head coach of the Texans. I love this hire. I think it's a great hire. I think it's exactly what the Texans need right now. And look, as Detroit fans, we know that rebuilding is a ugly, lengthy process. But so we won't know if this is a good hire probably until 2-3 years from now, if they make it that far, because the Texans seem to be running on a short fuse all the time. But I think if anybody can turn that organization around, I think Ryans, if you give him a couple years and actually pair him with a good GM and get all that stuff going in the right direction, they can make that team, a potential playoff team a couple years down the road.
This is a really good hire, John. It really is. He's a former player. He's got the defensive-minded mentality that I think you bring into a team that needs that. And I think, depending on who he gets as his offensive coach and who they get with that number one overall pick, with their second overall pick, they're going to have the guys that they need to be successful. And I think that they'll build the defense first, probably, and he'll find the help on the offensive side of the ball, right? And I think that he's the right guy for the job. This is about as good of a hire as you can get for the Texans. I was honestly surprised he took it, but this is an awesome hire. I'm excited to see what they do with this. He's well deserving.
Yeah, absolutely. So that basically wraps it up for the news and the game coverage for this past week. Obviously, like I said, no game to look forward to this week unless you're a big fan of that super exciting Pro Bowl experience we're about to get.
But we did have Kellen Moore too, John. I think so.
Oh, that's right. He got hired as the Chargers OC, which is massive. And look, we saw what he's done in Dallas. We're all Dallas haters here, but definitely huge credit to what he's done offensively with them. He's getting no pun intended, a supercharged offense to work with. So it should be exciting.
It should be exciting. I think he'll be able to do more with Herbert than he was able to do with Dak. I just think they're different talents. But, Chargers fans, at least they had this happen because somehow when the Chargers have been out of the playoffs for multiple weeks, you have Joey Bosa just getting –
so embarrassing,
dude. Like how hard is it? Clearly,
just
he has
shut
anger
your mouth.
issues.
Yeah,
clearly he has anger. Like even his family, the second that he turned around, that video of the Eagles fan just heckling a Bosa.
They're like, "Oh, come here, Joey! Like, get over here, Joey!" Like,
and then the way, dude, he's such a meathead. The way he responded, he's like, "Oh, you're gonna send this to your buddies on Snapchat?" Like, dude, you just sound like a douchebag. And I'm not a huge Bosa fan. I mean, they're Ohio State guys. I think they both seem kind of douchey. But that was bad. And then the whole game, I don't know if you saw the other videos, he was in a suite up above and the Eagles fans were underneath him just talking shit the whole time. I mean, the Eagles fans are a different monster, man.
They're rough. They're real rough around the edges.
But that was hilarious. I think that was worth talking about. And
no, definitely.
The Chargers just can't win, man. Even when they're not playing, Yeah,
it's not a good look at all. But yeah, sorry for forgetting those. But anyways, we appreciate everybody tuning in. Look, we got, essentially 2 weeks, but really 1 week left in this NFL season. So we're really excited to kind of pregame for the Super Bowl. I'm sure that's going to be a blast next week. And yeah, they got to figure out what we're going to do as far as offseason goes, whether it be mock drafts and things like that. Free agency is going to be crazy. So definitely stay tuned because, just because the regular season and the postseason are over doesn't mean that we're done creating content. Should be some good breathing room for the podcast to talk.
There's going to be all kinds of content, I think year round. The NFL is a year round thing. I mean, whether you're in season, off season, there's always news. There's always stuff to talk about.
Totally.
But we have the best part of the year coming up here. In the next couple of weeks, Super Bowl prep, and then obviously the Super Bowl itself is one of the best days of the year. So,
Yes, sir. Appreciate everybody tuning in, and we will see you next week. And thanks again to JP for coming on.